Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. And today we have our featured guest, Julie Hoyle, who we love and respect so much, back for keeping it real. Welcome back, Julie.
Thank you so much. I've been really dying to get back on because I think it's been, 3 months, Lisa, since we had a conversation about what keeping it real means. So I'm ready to dive right in. And I would like to say to all those who are listening and watching and joining to please share. If you want to, share something or ask a question or, whatever you want to do to keep the conversation going. We really, really appreciate it because Lisa and I both do this for you as a way of shining light and supporting the truth that you are the self, the supreme self, or you are already realized, or however you want to sort of phrase that. So please, just feel free to comment. That would be absolutely fantastic. So what I wanted to do was start with an anecdote that landed this afternoon, and that relates to my grandfather on my mother's side. His name is not alive anymore, but his name was Maurice, and he was the most lovely, gentle, kind, compassionate, caring individual you can imagine. Quite shy. His work, his livelihood was in carpentry. He was a carpenter, and he was a very, very skilled carpenter as well. He could essentially create anything from wood and do marquetry and all kinds of things. And what happened is when the kids were out of the house and gone, he and my grandmother turned their attention to collecting antiques. They were absolutely crazy for antiques. So they started gathering antiques in their, I think, mid-30s, late 30s, something like that. And they soon had a whole house full of really good top quality pieces from the Wedgwood factory and rose glass and all kinds of things. I mean, their home was like this museum, I guess you could call it, or exhibition space or whatever. So whenever we would go and visit, he would, be showing us all these things. And I'm trying to remember when it was, but I think now it must have been maybe 15 years ago, it was one summer and obviously Tony and I were living in the Bahamas, and it was one summer when we went to visit the UK and visit family. And so we went with my mom to visit my grandmother and my grandfather. So he very quietly came over to us and just said, would you like to come and see my secret space? So we said yes. So, we were intrigued. And he had a ladder that took us up into the loft. So we all, shimmied up the ladder and went into this fairly large loft space. And he was showing us some of his very, very rare finds. So we looked at those and we had conversations. Then he went to the wood paneling along the side and he tapped and there was movement, and he'd made these secret wood panels that would move with a tap or a movement, with one of the sort of surround spaces, and it would slide open, and there was no like little knobs or indentations. If you looked at the walls, it looked just like it was wood paneling, and there was nothing hidden at all. He had 4 or 5 secret little compartments up in the loft that you would never find if you didn't know. And he slid them open, and he took out these very, very rare silver coins from I don't even know what decade it was, but it was, I think it was pre-World War I. And he was telling us the cost and the price and the value of them, which was very, very high. And so he would go into one compartment, pull them out and show us, and then he'd go into another compartment, pull them out and show us. So because Tony and I were absolutely fascinated, we spent several hours up there with him. He was absolutely delighted to share this information and to show us, because it obviously did not do it with everybody. And so we were just, our minds were blown, quite honestly, because he'd never mentioned this before. My grandmother had never mentioned it before. My mother didn't know either, because we told her that, later on. She's like, really? We said yes. So anyway, what happened was, my grandfather died a year or 2 later, and my grandmother survived for 4 or 5 or 6 years, something. It wasn't too much longer, and then she passed away. And then, of course, the house was sold. And prior to the house being sold, I told my brothers and my mom and everybody, listen, there are these secret chambers up in the loft, and there are valuables in them. There's these rare coins. Before you sign the contract and hand the house over, you might want to go up there and check, right? So, and I'm giving them this information. Tony and I are in the Bahamas and all of those things. So what happened is, my 2 middle brothers went to the house, shimmied up the ladder, tried to find their secret compartments, and could not find them. And they tried and could not find them. I guess they didn't know. There must maybe have been some mechanism or something, and they just couldn't figure it out. And so those coins stayed behind those wood panels. The house was sold, and my brother, who's just a darling, is just such a sweetheart, actually went to the house and spoke to the lady, the new owner that had taken it on, and told her that there were these kind of rare coins up in the loft, and it was up to her whether she wanted to go and take a look. But the reason I'm sharing this is that this anecdote is just so like what happens when we have a shift in consciousness, or there's an awakening. We start to access or have access to our gifts, and that might come through our creativity exploding, or becoming more intuitive, or more connected in, or suddenly we might want to write poetry and all of those things. And there can be a tendency, rather than standing behind that and owning it and sort of sharing it, because I often think, if my grandfather had actually taken the time to share these coins out and give them to family members, especially as he was getting advanced in age and really he wasn't going to do much with them, then everybody would have benefited. And it's not necessarily that we would have sold them, but it was just lovely to have something that belonged to my grandfather and my grandmother. And the thing is this is how we can be. We can be very tentative with respect to sharing our gifts and revealing them, because we're often afraid of being judged, or afraid of being seen, or what will people think, and so on and so forth. And I know that has certainly been true in my case. It's probably been true in your case too, as well, Lisa, with respect to kind of the bigger projects landing, rather than kind of sitting on them and hiding them away. Or maybe speak, another thing we do is we'll have conversations with maybe 1 or 2 people and reveal our vision or reveal our idea, but don't necessarily share it and sort of take it to what I call the next level. So I'm sure you've got your own little kind kind of anecdotes or experiences around what that looks like? And I'm sure listeners have as well, right? Because there can be some fear around really stepping out and being seen. It's always about being seen. And I know one of the things that my grandfather was a little nervous about was break-ins and, you know, burglars going into the house and stealing what he'd collected for all these years. And I'm sure that was part of the reason he had sort of made these secret sort of compartments and was hiding away the most valuable items. And this is how we can be, right? Well, I just showed this little bit, but I'm going to hide this part because this part is really, you know, very beautiful or very powerful or very radiant or whatever descriptors we want to give to the things. So I think this is a great place to start because I'm sure we've all had experiences with this, and there can be fear around owning the truth of who we are and shining it and shining bright and sharing it.
I love this story because it really is like exactly what happens. And it makes me think of two specific, like, direct things. One is how many times I've been pulled aside at a party or at somebody's house, and they're like, you know, I know you're a psychic and I see this, or I talk to people, and it's like a secret. It's like they know they can tell me, but they don't want anybody else to know. Yeah. And then the other thing that it makes me think of is how many times people come to my office and sit down in front of me and say, I've always wanted to write a book, or I have this idea. And they like have these brilliant, creative, fantastic ideas. And it's like they're looking for permission to go do them. And sometimes they still don't go do them. Even when you say, oh yeah, you have these gifts, or yes, you should write a book. It's like there's still this not completing it or not bringing it out, just like you're talking about here.
Yes, and pulling back, or taking one step and then pulling back, or feeling overwhelmed, you know, and giving themselves too many busy projects rather than actually, taking one step towards their call to action. And also, there's a lack of trust as well with respect to the universe or the self or source stepping up to facilitate and support whatever help you need. Because as you and I both know, when you don't have a clue how, you'll do whatever it is you're called to do, someone will show up and support you or guide you in the right direction. And that is unfailing. It happens every single time. And in fact, when I really, and usually actually that is the case, I don't have a clue. And I just kind of will ask a question, to source, the universe, and then someone, synchronicity happens, and then I'm given some support, at least to take the first step, and then to keep going with it. And and this is true with everything, whether it's a creative project, or it might be kind of an intuition about looking for a new job, or asking for a raise, or whatever, however that sort of plays itself out. It's really source itself getting your attention, dropping an intuition into your being so that you kind of hear it and recognize what it's saying, but then finding the courage to take that step and follow wherever it's leading. And like you, what I find is, especially with the people I work with, they have these incredible ideas and motivations to do things. And sometimes they've been holding on to those for 10 or 15 or 20 years and not doing anything with it. And they'll say, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know. And I always say, if it's still in you, if it still has vitality, if it is still knocking on your door, then believe me, it is for you. And it is your job to do something with this so that it doesn't sort of fall on fallow ground, And and this is where you get your vitality and your energy, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to say something about it, but I also want to say hello to all these incredible comments and all of you guys who are here with us. It was such a great audience. Mary is sharing, she said, this is a wonderful break in my day to be with my favorite community. And Karen feels the same way. Thank you guys so much. I love this. And Hope says that contagious smile is just what I needed to see. Oh, I love that so much. So, thank you guys for sharing. I would love for you guys to share because we have such a huge audience today and you guys are all commenting. What are you hiding? What gifts are you hiding? I want to hear what you're hiding. And, it's funny, Julie, because today's the new moon in Aries and the message of a new moon in Aries is it's time to take action, which is so perfect with what you're talking about, because what I wanted to say was, it seems like we think we have to identify with something in order to do it. Like, well, I'm not a writer, so I can't write a book, or I'm not an artist, so I don't know why I'm thinking of painting. There's this, I hear that all the time, and I know you do.
Yes, all the time. And it can be very helpful if you have somebody that embodies, someone in your life who embodies the qualities or the gifts that you most want to bring forth. That can be very helpful, but the thing that can often happen is there can be this sort of comparison game where you think, oh, she's so successful and her work is so amazing and my work, I'm just starting and will people even pay attention, and am I ready? So the thing is oftentimes is, am I ready or I'm not ready? I need to learn more and do more, whatever. And that can be a really big obstacle because it really is born of fear. It's fear of failure, or fear of not being successful, or fear of not being accepted, or however that sort of plays out. Mm-hmm. Rather than actually just sitting and listening to what your own intuitive guidance is speaking to and calling you to, and maybe just starting by saying, let me just have some fun with this and see what happens, rather than feeling like it's got to become a big project. I mean, it might, but in the initial stages it's really about honoring that, and certainly again I can speak to that because the whole reason I started writing, however many years ago it was now, 2005 or 6 or something like that, was because I really felt a need to journal. Like you, as a big sort of journal writer and keeper, and I would just ask self-inquiry questions in my journal, and before I knew it, I'd start writing, and really, expressing that and sharing that, and asking questions of source, and just seeing what would come out of that. And and all of that journal writing has been fantastic with respect to content, because I can still pull out from all those years ago these very meaty, nuggety, very wise kind of things that would land, that I would just it was dictated, it felt like, and I would write it down in my journal, and so the reason I'm sharing that is because we never know what the beginning phase is going to sort of lead us into, but we have to say yes, right? We have to at least be willing to try something out, and then just go with it and see where it takes us. Because I'm sure if you hadn't listened to your prompt to do your journal writing, that wouldn't have then in the same way led you to write your books. And so and everybody's starting points are different. It might be that you meditate, or you go into nature, or however that plays out, but you have to play your part with respect to at least engaging in what your call to action looks like in the very beginning, and then trust that the right experts or the right people to help support you will show up, because they really always do. And it might just be a comment that somebody says to you in the food store, and it just lands, right? And it's just like, oh my gosh, how did they know?
Well, yeah, and there's the resilience that comes, I think, from the inner work, because you have to be able to receive, you have to be able to receive the criticism that's going to block you, because I think that that's a big part of it, is you're either afraid to take this step, or when you do, something immediately happens where you're like, oh no, I shouldn't do this, or it's not right. And I think for me anyways, it's been my perseverance, like my willingness, like if I can't figure out how to work something technical, or if I get pushed back on something, to keep going and to use that as almost like as a way to empower yourself to keep going. I think, and that comes from doing the inner work, and the shadow work is like not letting those old tapes play that say, oh, I can't do that, or I just won't even bother, or nope, it's showing me. I can't tell you how many times, Julie, I've heard somebody say, well, I've gotten these signs I shouldn't do this. And I think, is it a sign you're not supposed to do it? Or is it just a test to see if you're really going to do it?
Yes. 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 Yeah, because it's so easy to sort of opt out if things don't go smoothly. And of course, they never go smoothly.
Never do. Especially when you don't know what you're doing.
Yes, yes. Look. The other side of all of this, or the big sort of aspect of this too, is that when you understand that what you're being called to and what you're responding to isn't coming from a place of self-aggrandizement. Oh, I'm going to write a book because I want Julie Hoyle to be famous, the best-selling author. Oh, and maybe I'll get onto Oprah Winfrey. Oh, yeah. Wait, I need to get my hair, and maybe I need a facelift. It's none of that, right? It's nothing to do with that. Honest to God, seriously, if it was that, I wouldn't be a million miles away from right where I am right now. There's no way. I'm absolutely not interested. There's no interest at all in that. It's actually quite a surprise that I'm doing what I'm doing, just because normally I'm fairly contemplative, quiet, and all of those things. But it's about honoring the path, honoring the tradition, honoring the awakening power, honoring the validity and the truth that I am the embodiment of source. You are the embodiment of source. And everyone here is the embodiment of source, which is your true nature. And I keep banging my drum about that because that is the truth. And it has proven itself again and again in my life. And so my call to action is to speak to that, to serve that, and to be a reflection for that and of that. So it's about, honoring the light of that and the beauty of that and the expansion of that and the abundance of that, rather than, the Julie Hoyle kind of label or whatever. That really has no relevance here. It's about honoring everything that I have been given, that I'm so grateful for. And utilizing and sharing the gifts of that in order to help facilitate transformation and awakening and self-recognition in those that are ready to receive what is given through what I share. And I know this is true for you and your work, and I know this is also true for all those people who have any interest at all in what you and I are saying, because if it was really about the ego and self-aggrandizement, nobody would be on this show. I don't know where they'd be, but I don't know where they'd be. I don't want to call any names, but anyway, they really would not be here. It just is not about
I agree. And talk about truth. We have so many comments. This is so awesome. You guys are rocking today. So let's see here. We have things we're denying, making music. We have, I'm hiding my ability to connect with goddess and divine feminine energy. Carrie says, the gift she's hiding is animal communication, has always been present in my life for the longest time. I thought everyone did this, and now I recognize what a gift it truly is. Mary says, you guys are just, it's awesome. Taking action is precisely what I've been tapped into. I have a very slow, natural rhythm, and I am pushing myself forward to keep my momentum, and your community and everyone here are. And we have Shelly says, resonate, follow the flow of what feels right in each moment. Joy calling, get stronger and stronger. Let's see, what else do we have? Let's see, we have another one from Shelley, honoring, it's motivating. So yeah, thank you guys for all your shares. It's so many, and look at all of those beautiful gifts that you guys are hiding that really, they're out now. You just said it out loud, so now they're out. I can't hide anymore. Oh my gosh.
Like,
well, this is making me think. Oh, go ahead.
It's like the lid has been lifted, you know, that sort of secret compartment has been blown open, so to speak.
Yes, you can't hide anymore. We see you. And it makes me think of my book. I guess I'll share it because it does make me think of this. So I just finished my next book, and I got some tough criticism or pushback on my content from the publisher yesterday. And this is one of those moments where I did have that moment where I thought, well, geez, like, should I just not bother? Should I do this a different way? Like, what am I doing? And I think that's the thing is, you get things like that happen. And for me, what happened was, in a very short amount of time, I was upset for about an hour, and then I moved on, because what I realized was I was just being invited to do more work. Like, I'm being invited, like, there's more to do here. There's more to refine. There's more to do. And there's something I'm going to get from it. And so I think that's what's helped me to say yes to everything that I've been asked to do, is I know I'm going to be learning from it. Something is going to come. And when it does, there's always this huge expansion. Like, every time you go through something hard and you learn something and you have to do something, there's all this expansion that comes from it too.
Yeah, every single time, as uncomfortable as that can be, you know, it just is, it's incredible. You know, and it can be hard. Sometimes it can knock you flat for a few days. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times. I think the first time I wrote the first book, the whole draft, you know, my computer crashed. I hadn't backed it up. Well, I'd backed up kind of earlier versions, but I'd got into this, you know, real sort of movement with it, and I was banging out the chapters. It was just going so well. You know, you just feel like you're in that flow, and it was amazing, and I just felt really good about it. And then the computer just sort of crashed, and everything was gone. So I had to start all over again. And I honestly, I was so upset, you can imagine, right? So, but it was a big lesson, because I also realized that the words and everything, the content was still there. It was still, because it came from source. It was nothing to do with the mind. So, but it was, you know, I had to extract it again and do the sort of the mechanical work of sort of typing it all out again. But it was a really big lesson in terms of make sure and save as you go, right? And have it up places and all the things that you hear. And, you know, I'd heard that for years, but was I doing it? No. And then, you know, I was creating the intuitive art courses. A few times I did the recordings, and it was just, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful day, and so on and so forth. And, you know, I do a recording for 25 minutes or 40 minutes or something like that. And then when I'd go to upload it, the file was corrupted, or I'd used up all my space, and then I couldn't extract it when I'd released some space, you know, and on the story went. So there were a few of those kinds of situations as well. And you just have to really just be able to sort of just deal with it and and turn it into a positive. And I always say, okay, what was I meant to learn here? What's the primary teaching here? What was I missing, or what did I overlook? And there's always a gift inherent in absolutely everything. But you know, it's never about just dropping it. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I have a little delay today. I've noticed it on the earlier show, so I don't mean to interrupt you. I've got this weird delay, I think. Yeah. But I had the same thing happen. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just saying, the same thing happened with Awaken Grace. I had 15 interviews, and I lost all my content. It was all deleted, and there's no way to get it back. And it was pretty devastating, and this went on for a few weeks, and I was able to retrieve it, but when you talk about what you learn from it, I think for me, I had kind of put that project aside, and through that process, I realized I really wanted to follow through on that project, and am following through on that project now. And then that's when the content was retrieved and I was able to actually recover it. But and I did go get a hard drive to back things up after that too.
Yes. It's funny the way these things work, but there's, like I said, there's always a lesson in everything. But oftentimes what happens, and I know you get this too, with the people I work with, they'll start something, they'll have a glitch like that, and then they'll think that that's a sign, I shouldn't be doing it, or it's not going to work, or whatever the story is. It's like, no, this is just, a little bump, and, keep going. So, yeah, it's really about being able to sort of deal with all of that. Because, we're in the world, we deal with things in the world, and stuff like this comes up. But it's really important to really own and stand behind what your gifts are, and also don't be afraid to expand on them. Instead of just, okay, maybe you're an intuitive and you can do sort of card reading or something like that, and that's worked well for 5 or 10 years or something. You know what I mean? But you just don't get stuck in that kind of the pattern or the comfort of that. Be willing to kind of expand and to look at what your next call is with respect to really, inviting in new gifts or expanding on the gifts in a new way, and looking at how you can, serve humanity through that, because it's always about uplifting humanity, helping to awaken humanity, and honoring what you've been given, rather than going to your grave with your gifts still in you, or your gifts locked away, as in my grandfather's case. And that is true of many, many, many people who in this world who just don't give themselves a chance, really, is what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that there's so much value in what you're saying about, being open to new things, because things do evolve, and we evolve if we're doing things right. If we're working on ourselves, we evolve. And I think, it's really important to go back to what you said, Julie, at the very beginning about, does it have vitality? Because I think we can get stuck in a pattern of doing something, even if it is our gifts. And my direct example is me as a psychic reader. That was a really important part of my journey, was to work with all of you as a psychic reader and do psychic fairs and read cards and learn all this stuff and, help you. And what has happened is that over these years, that kind of energy has really shifted for me, and I want to support in a different way. And I have different gifts I want to use to support you. And so you really have to look at, when it's time to put something away and really shift into something new. And I think that links to like lack and abundance too, because I think we have to hold on to something, and that holding on like that is part of why we don't open up to our gifts, I think, is because we're clinging to something that looks a certain way, or a certain identity or whatever. And I think letting all that go and just becoming who you're meant to be today in this moment, and it just creates so much expansion. I never thought I'd be like a producer of film, and all of a sudden that's what I'm doing. And I'm like, wow, I actually really love this. And it's not all I do, but when it came down like, hey, you're going to make a documentary, I'm like, what the heck? How am I going to do that? But you just find a way, but you learn that you actually have these other skills you never had. If you just put it aside, like, you're never going to bring something into the world that really needs to be there.
Yes, exactly. And it can be a little bit daunting when these kind of new directives land in areas that you really feel like you don't have expertise in, and or you're kind of new at. It can be like, oh, I'm not sure about this, and then just by again taking the first step, you realize, wow, you really love, you're really loving what you're doing and what you're learning, and then really that love is about fresh vitality and energy, and insight and expansion and transformation and all of those things. And it's really that gives you it gives you kind of enthusiasm for life in a new way, no matter how old you are, right? And it really is, it's so important, I think, not to get stuck in these kind of grooves of doing the same thing because you've had success with doing certain things, and just being willing to open and try something that is different, something that stretches you, and maybe something that scares you a little, and not worrying about what the outcome looks like, because if it's a call to service from source itself, then it has to be good, in my mind. Right?
I agree. Yes. And I want to share, Amy has a great story here in her comments. She said, I went through a significant trauma about 12 years ago. It completely disconnected me from my ability to draw and paint, which was my major in college and what I've always done. And she goes on to say, through the process of healing that trauma, which started 4 years ago, I started to want to draw again. And that's part of what's going into the book that I'm writing. It's all connected. And I love hearing that so much. Thank you for sharing. You guys these comments are awesome.
Yes, because, trauma, and that's a great share from Amy, because trauma will close down gifts faster than anything, right? Because it can really impact your psyche and your emotional body and all of those things. And it can really sort of diminish your energy and your vitality around even getting behind anything new, or even things that you've always done and always loved. But again, there's always a positive. There's always something beneficial that comes out of that. So I'm really happy to hear that Amy's going to be utilizing her direct experience and helping people, because there's a need for that. There's a need to be able to use art or self-inquiry or whatever you want to, however you want to sort of call it, to work with trauma and with grief and emotional upset and all of those things, especially in the world today. So, and your own direct experience is incredibly potent and incredibly powerful, because that has the greatest value. It's a treasure. So that's really wonderful to hear it. Are there any other shares here?
There are. I mean, this is just awesome. You guys are rocking it here. So Mary said, I was working towards a successful music career that looked a specific way and just never landed the traction I wanted, always a little bit behind my goal. When I opened up a new way of sharing my music, my whole world burst open. So thank you for sharing. And Mary, of course, we love her so much. But yeah, I mean,
yes,
it's amazing when we think things are supposed to be a certain way. When we let that go is when everything changes.
Yes. Yeah, because, and I've shared this before, pretty soon after my spiritual awakening in 1989, it was so radical and, life-changing really, and all of those things. And I started becoming interested in, everything from meditation to Reiki and to whatever else. I had this fantasy that rather than teaching in high school, that I would set up, I'd learn some sort of healing techniques or whatever, and set up an office and have some nice music playing, and, the water over the pebbles, and just very, this calm atmosphere to take me outside of, the craziness in high schools. And, I had that dream for quite a while, and I was always trying to sort of figure out, how to get out of teaching so I could do this other thing that would be just so calming. And and of course, then I got wise to what was going on through doing the shadow work, and then realizing I was absolutely where I needed to be, because through the work I was doing and through my own awakening and the direct sort of process and integration of that, the students I was meeting every day were benefiting. And I know that there were many, many, many students that had awakenings and continue to have awakenings. And I hear it all the time through what they say to me. I mean, I got a card was it yesterday? I've got it here, from a girl that's 14. And she says, I'm going to read it for you actually, because this isn't, again, it's not coming from self-aggrandizement at all. It's coming from source. And the words of this student tell me that she's connecting to source. She recognizes source. She feels seen, and in her own language, that is what she's receiving when she spends time with me. So she says, "Thank you for being such a great teacher and for adding color to our lives. Your calm, helpful, patient presence in the art room really adds to the class. I really appreciate you. I really love how I feel when I'm with you. And I hope that you continue shining your light." And that's
Beautiful.
from a 13-year-old. So, that speaks volumes. Again, it's not about self-aggrandizement. It's about the recognition of the self. It's about her feeling seen. It's about her being able to articulate the words that have meaning for her and really help her to, be herself and be at ease, and then discover, who she is and what her gifts look like too. And find the courage and the confidence to stand behind them. Because a lot of what I do is with adults or kids is always about what feels right for you. And they say, "Oh, what color should this be? Or what should I put there?" What feels right for you? What would that look like? What do you think that would be? And it's always about that. It's always about, honoring the light of the self, reflecting the light of the self, and speaking to the light of the self. Obviously using appropriate language, whether it's teenagers or adults. But it's always about that, and how, for everybody here, how do you reflect that? How do you mirror that? How do you stand in the ownership of that? And what is your call to action with sharing the gifts of who you are through your music, your art, your poetry, your writing, your, whatever it is, your work, even if you feel like, well, I don't have many creative gifts, here I am, an accountant or whatever. I'm just in the office with, a team of people. Well, the light of the self, the light of your heart is actually what's doing the work. And it is that is helping other people to awaken to the self. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're using spiritual language, or you might be working, I don't know, McDonald's or in a coffee shop or whatever. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you're doing. It's about your own self-recognition and then shining the light of that so others can recognize it within themselves.
Well, and it's worth, what you're bringing up is worth sharing kind of my experience, which is, I worked in fashion retail for 20 years, but I didn't just work in fashion retail for 20 years. I worked in retail for like 2 or 3 years, and then I'd quit and I'd go do psychic readings for 1 or 2 or 3 years. And then I'd quit and then I'd go to retail for 2 or 3 years, and I'd quit and I'd go back to readings. And in my own inner work, what I discovered, and this is, Julie, this is cool because I just realized this weekend while I was writing. This was like one of these epiphanies I had this weekend. So prior to this weekend, I absolutely knew that I was kind of escaping and not committing both ways. I would go do readings and then I'd, need a break. And I was kind of this weird way of like taking breaks from these things because I tend to run 150% if no one has noticed yet. And I didn't learn balance. And so I'd kind of go back and forth between the two. And just like you're saying, I was still healing when I was sitting with a woman in a fitting room who would break down in tears and tell me her whole life story, even though she didn't know that I was, a psychic or able to help her, and I was holding space for her. So you're doing your work no matter where you were and no matter what you're doing. But what I realized this weekend is this back and forth, this is what changed for me last year. This is why Buddhist biohacker and a Jatakasa and all these things actually happened. Because what happened last year is I realized that I was not committed to my path or my gifts. And it was time to step into it all the way. And when I did that, there was no more, oh, should I go back to work? Should I do reading? Should I do this? And I think a lot of us do that, just like you're saying, Julie, about your little Zen office. You know, we think, oh, if I didn't have to go to this job every day and I could do this and that, and it's this escape. And what I realized last year is I was still trying to escape, even though I was working for myself and working with clients and doing what I wanted to do. And that is what changed. That was the saying yes for me, was something inside of me changed. And it was like, no, I am going to do exactly 100% what I was born to do. And I'm going to go do it. And I'm not going to be like one foot in and one foot out. And it really is why this has all happened. And the gifts of being able to build teams and work with people and all of those things are part of this community and part of this show. I mean, there's a lot of tactical things that I learned in fashion that I use every single day when I do what I do here. And so it's just this really beautiful way of looking at, you know, don't wait for the perfect office or the right job or the right amount of money. Just go do what you came here to do, however that looks.
Yes. And you know, and just get started, you know. It might not be that you feel like you're in the perfect place to begin with, or you know, you're in the perfect place with respect to the creative project you're called to. But at least get started with it. You know, don't be like, and I've spoken about this before, but you know, there's a few people I know who still say they're writing their book 10 or 15 or even 20 years on. You know, and really, honestly, if it's taking that long, then there's something that's not quite right. You know, or creating a website. Oh, I must create my website. And, you know, you and I mean, you're the queen of websites. You've created so many, actually. You know, and what we both learned is you just create it. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. You know, you hit publish and that's it, you know, and you can refine it as you go. But again, I know a lot of people that talk about, you know, they want to get their website absolutely perfect and make sure that the content and the text and the images are perfect before they publish. And, you know, again, it's a setup for failure because it's an avoidance tactic. And the other thing that I hear a lot is, oh, I've got so much creative energy and I've got all these projects I really want to work on and I just feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to begin. You know, and again, all of that oftentimes is avoidance tactics because there's an unwillingness or there's fear around standing behind the one that has the most energy and is calling them the most strongly, right? So, because there's always one that stands out. You know, you might have 10, but there might be one or two even sometimes. But, you know, we can think, oh, I'm going to try this and go over here and do that. And a lot of that is just really avoidance and not really wanting to dig deep and just go for it and finish the one that is calling the most loudly, because there is always one that has the biggest voice.
Well, and I think, you know, the refinement and the maturity comes through doing it. So I think that waiting to be ready or to have the degree or the certificate or the validation or I've made a ton of mistakes. And I'm going to make mistakes. And I think that that's the thing, is that my maturity, I'm watching my own maturity happen, and it's happening because when you do it, I said this the other day in the app, actually, in spiritual entrepreneurship, when you have to write your own bio, you inner work, like all of these things you want to do, like that is the work, that is the refinement. If you don't do the website wrong, you're not going to learn how to do it right. It's taking action that actually brings it into form. It brings the criticism into consciousness, it brings it all forward. So you have to deal with it. Otherwise, you're not really doing any of it, and you're never going to be ready.
No. And I guess the thing is, I've never really kind of worried about making mistakes ever. I've never worried about sounding like an idiot. When I get on stage and I'm called to say something, or it doesn't. I don't care. Honestly, if there's a call to action, I'll just say yes, and I just do it. And I really don't worry about the outcome at all. I just never have. I've never worried about falling flat on my face, or something not looking good or sounding good, because for me, the bigger pain, so to speak, would be if I received this intuitive prompt and I didn't act on it. That to me would be much more painful than saying yes to a speaking engagement, for example, and then just not blubbering all the way through it or whatever. I'd be like, so what? And I just have fun with it, and I think that's the way to go, and to realize it's not about self-aggrandizement. It's about honoring the supreme self or source, or whatever term you want to give, just God or spirit, or the mystery. And and just being open to the adventure of that and the call to serve that, because to me, this is the best show in town, so to speak. I've never been interested in kind of making a ton of money or being well known or any of those things, or having a Ferrari or whatever. There's nothing wrong with those things too, I have to say. If they land in your life and you have, that's fine. But that's just never been my motivation. My motivation has always been about truth, being in truth, speaking from truth, sharing truth, and supporting others to discover that for themselves, within themselves, right? Rather than quoting Eckhart Tolle or Gangaji or whoever, Muji or whoever, Jesus from the Bible. It's about that discovery within oneself, because that is the greatest treasure, that is the greatest joy, and that is what gives us the most incredible vitality and energy, and also gives us purpose in life. So it's always about that. It's always about owning that and standing in the truth of that and being the embodiment of that too, and not just kind of like closing off or hiding or which we've all done, right? At certain points in our life, we've all done that. So
for sure. Well, it's about the creating. I mean, I remember being a little kid, and I'm the same way. Like when I was a little kid, we got our first desktop computer. I mean, this is where I was at. Like we didn't even have those when I was really little, but when I was about 10, we got our first desktop computer, and we got Print Shop. And I literally sat and made at like 10 or 11 years old or whatever, I was obsessed with making business cards and banners and all these things, which is really funny nowadays because I'm like, wow, I really did love that. But I loved creating things that seemed so real, that made things real and exciting. And I still feel that way, like to write a book and see the cover and be like, oh my God, like I really created something, to click on the app on my phone and be like, holy crap, like I made that logo myself. Like, and it's not the thing, it's the creation of it. It's that we can create things, we can create reality, and it's so amazing. Like that's the whole point of being here, in my opinion. Like this is probably why I want to come here to Earth, because that's what it is. It's creating, and we are just like you're saying, Julie. We're source. God can only create through us, and how cool is that? Like we're creating that energy for source, and what an amazing gift we have to do that. So that's, for me, it's like the creation of things, the creation of I love it. From when I was little, creating pamphlets and doing projects at school and art and everything. I mean, that's
Yes.
what everybody's list here is like: spiritual gifts, art. I'm seeing music in here in multiple places. Like it's the Shakti.
Yes, it's the Shakti, and the Shakti is Source itself. And when you connect into Source itself, you feel it, right? And you're anointed by it or initiated by it, whatever, however you want to phrase that, right? So you're in that, you're in the flow of that, and you are sharing that, so that what you do and what you're offering is a vehicle for the awakening power. And that is the absolute truth, because I know from, you know, what readers have written and shared with me, that many people have got Shaktipat from reading my books. Many people. And also from doing courses, or even just reading, you know, an article I've written on Tiny Buddha or wherever. And so I know that this is happening, and the Shakti is moving through and embodied in everything that is being shared. And it's that people are looking for. People are looking for awakening. They're looking for some sort of proof that God is real and God exists, and they're not crazy, and, you know, all of those things. And that, you know, people want transformation. They want to be lifted up. They want to feel that, you know, the merging with God, with Christ consciousness, with Source, however you want to put that. That's what we long for from the minute we land, actually.
Yeah. I love this. Amy sharing, I think Amelia Earhart said, the only way to do is to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's so true. Like, you just have to do it and ask questions later. And there is a difference. Like, I've noticed, like what you're talking about, Julie, about the multiple projects and distractions. I can definitely, if I allow my mind to take control, I can create all sorts of projects and things that seem creative, but aren't actually coming from Source. And I think you can really tell if you get present with your list, for those of you who are writing in the comments that you're feeling overwhelmed by everything you want to do, because I get that way, and I'm sure you do, Julie, too. Sometimes it's like, oh, I want to do all these things. Is really sitting back and saying, okay, which of these is really directed from Source? And, you know, I can say very directly from my own experiences this last week was, I do have a lot of projects and I have a lot of things I want to do. And some of them are things I want to do from wherever place that's from. And when I really sat with it, like my book, it was like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And you need, that's what's landing from Source. And I had to kind of push aside the other stuff. So you have to get good at letting go, because you have to let go of some of the things you want to do that's coming from a different place than what you're being asked to do.
Yes, yes. And the other thing I'll do as well is I'll often say, what is the most obvious next step with respect to, you know, one or more of the creative projects? And, you know, we always know, right, that what that is and what the call is. And it might be that, you know, you've been called to write the preface of a book and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to say, you know, I don't know where to go with that, whatever. You know, let me look at these other projects going on over here. Or, you know, the chapter 10 or wherever, you're at the end of the book and you're going through these difficult sort of experience. Yeah, so you know, it's easy to just kind of keep ourselves busy, rather than looking at something that might be a little uncomfortable or a little challenging. But, you know, again, this is where keeping it real comes in, because it's really about being honest as well, being honest with yourself and saying, okay, you know, are these kind of vanity projects over here, or is this really a call to action from Source? And if it is authentic, and if it's really truly a call to action from Source, it will keep showing up and it won't leave you alone, and it will still be there, you know, weeks or months later, kind of knocking on the door saying, hey, you know, when are you going to create that website or that blog, you know? It doesn't leave.
It doesn't, and it's not easy ever. They'll make it easy for you. I've learned, like, there's always an easeful solution but the experience is not easy. Like, and there's always work behind it. And especially a lot of you guys in here are writers. Julie and I are writers. But when you write about your stuff, your own life, it is the hard, it's like inner work times a million. And
Yes.
it's true for any creative project. I don't care if you're making music or art or writing, but it's such a personal thing. And so to say yes means you're saying yes to that work, and it isn't easy, but you will absolutely be supported. There's always an answer. Like, that's the thing. There's never, you're not going to not have a solution. You just have to stay open to what the solution might be.
Yes. Yes. And be willing to sit in the discomfort, or to sit in the challenge, or to sit in the not knowing, or all three.
Yes. And be willing to receive support. Like, that's a huge thing. You know, Michelle and I talked about that this morning, and I feel that now, like with my book, like I asked for some support. And I think like that's hard to say, I want to accomplish this thing and I can't do it myself. And, you know, Claire is sharing, I love this comment. She says, Julia Cameron says, in order to be good artists, we must first be willing to make bad art.
Yes.
And so true.
Yes. And just to feel like you want to throw everything in the bin. And we've all been there.
I've been there. Yes. And the thing is, sometimes you do have to throw something in the bin and start over, but you're still, it's about completing it. And that's what I've learned, you know, through working with you, Julie, and through all of this inner work, all these years, is being able to complete it. And that's like been almost an obsession for me the last 2 years, is I'm going to complete these things. I'm going to learn how to do it right and get it done and not hold on to it anymore. And that's not easy. It's not an easy commitment to yourself to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is if you don't, it just takes up space in your psyche, and you feel a bit sort of depressed about not having done it, right? Is what happens. And then you keep telling yourself, I really should do this and I should do that. No, you know, you're too busy, or whatever the story is.
Oh, totally. Well, and the story itself is exhausting. Like, I was really tired of saying, oh, I'm writing this book. It's like, no, I'm done. I want to just say it's done. Like, it's time to stop saying, oh, I want to do this thing. And I think that's a good pulse check for all of you guys watching today, is ask yourself, how many times am I saying, oh, I really want to do X, Y, Z, and you're just not doing it? Like, why are you not doing it? Like, why is that your story still?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because I don't have anything that I'm saying I really want to do, because when something lands, I just do it, even if I don't have a clue. I just have always done that. I'm just kind of receptively waiting for the next kind of thing, you know what I mean? And I just always know that it will just kind of wind its way through, and I'll be shown how to do it, and you know, and I'll have fun with it too, right? So it's not a chore and something else that you really should do, and I don't want to do.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, time just flies in here. I can't believe it's already been an hour. It's just, it's so great to have you back. I really missed talking to you every month. So maybe we won't wait for another 3 months. We'll figure out how we can do this more often, because it's just so nice to see you, and just a great audience today. You guys have just been awesome. And Julie, I'd love for you to share with everybody. I think by now they know how to find you, and it's across the screen, but I also would love for you to share, like, what do you have going on, and what's upcoming for you, and what do you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so you know, anybody can find me on my website, which is juliehoyle.org. You can also find me on Instagram at Julie Hoyle Official. And I have my own YouTube channel, which is, you know, Julie Hoyle on YouTube, which has been a lot of fun. I just do like 5 or 10 minute little kind of segments, speaking to questions that are coming up. I am currently in the beginning stages of writing a follow-up book on the shadow and how to work with the shadow, which is called the Shadow Diaries, the Shadow Work Diaries. How the darkness you fear holds the treasure you seek. I had to think that. So I'm working on that, and I've invited several people, our host included, to write a chapter. And so it's a sort of collaborative project. So that will hopefully be coming out in August. And then what landed in me a few weeks ago was to offer new sessions called the End of Seeking sessions. And I'm really offering those for people that have been on this spiritual path for many, many years and are kind of at the stage where they want to drop all of that and just really work with what is here. And so those have been going really, really well. And I've got other projects, but I won't speak to those just yet because I'm going to wait a little while until I get sort of clear about what that looks like. But those are the kind of my main areas of focus right now. And I'm also likely going to be creating new intuitive art projects that I'll be working on and uploading onto Coursecraft over the summer. So that's quite a bit right now, I would say. And yeah, and I'm just having fun. What can I say?
Well, yes. I love it. And we love everything that you are putting out into the world. And don't forget, everybody, that Julie's also in the Ajata Casa social media app. Her group is called Awake Now What? So don't forget to go in there. And if you are in there or you want to be in there, we do have a webinar free for everybody next Thursday, the 20th, to actually teach you how to work the app. So if you want to register for that, you can just go to lisamgunshore.com. And it's right at the top. There's like an announcement bar. So don't forget to do that as well. Julie, I love you so much. Thank you for everything and for being here today. It's so good.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy as always. You know how I go. I love every single minute. And I really love that we've had so much engagement because this is the whole point of being on here. Otherwise, I'd go take a walk on the beach or something. You know? I'm sure you do something else too, right? Go ride your bike or whatever. Although actually probably dig out snow right now in Colorado.
Yes, it snowed again. Jeez. Yes, thank you guys. Yeah, great audience today. And yes, love you so much, Julie. And we are back with one more show this week, you guys. And thank you so much. And have a great day. We'll see you guys in the app.
Bye.
Bye.